In the tumultuous tides of history, where the clamor of revolution gave way to the thunder of empire, there stood one figure whose shadow stretched across Europe, Napoleon Bonaparte. His legions, a tapestry of raw revolutionary zeal and the precision of a grand empire, rewrote the rules of engagement and reimagined the very essence of war. But how did the chaotic fervor of revolutionary soldiers transform into the legendary discipline of the Napoleonic army? Stay with us as we unravel the saga of transformation that forever altered the landscape of warfare. Picture the late 18th century in France, a nation roiling with the fires of revolution. The very fabric of society was being torn apart and rewoven by the hands of its own people. Out of this crucible of change arose an army, unlike any the world had seen before. They were not just fighting for land or king, but for an idea, a concept of liberty, equality, and fraternity. This was the French Revolutionary Army, an unorthodox force fueled by the passionate heartbeats of its citizen soldiers. Now, cast your gaze upon the figure of Napoleon Bonaparte, a man of remarkable ambition and intellect. His ascent was as meteoric as it was unexpected. A Corsican by birth and French by spirit, Napoleon embodied the chaos and the aspirations of his era. He knew the soul of his soldiers, for it echoed his own. A yearning for glory, a desire to imprint his will upon the annals of time. As we delve deeper, we see the genius of Napoleon not just in his strategic brilliance, but in his understanding of the power of transformation. He took the raw clay of the Revolutionary Army and sculpted it into a force that could march with the precision of a clockwork and strike with the fury of a tempest. This metamorphosis was not overnight. It was a careful, deliberate process that rewrote the doctrine of military engagement. Let's dive into the heart of the storm, where the French Revolutionary Army, composed of fervent citizens turned soldiers, clashed against the established order. Their courage was undeniable, their victories the stuff of legend. Yet within their ranks, the fires of revolution burned with an intensity that often bordered on chaos. They were a force of raw power, spontaneous and indomitable, but lacking the cohesion of a disciplined military. Enter Napoleon, a man who understood the combustible nature of his army. He saw the valor in their hearts, but he also recognized the desperate need for an anchor in the maelstrom. With a visionary's eye, he set about reorganizing this passionate force, instilling a sense of order to the passionate fervor. The Revolutionary Army had been a melting pot of individuals from all walks of life, driven more by ideology than by military doctrine. They grouped together in masses, fighting with a shared conviction but without the clear chain of command that is the spine of an effective military force. Each soldier was a volunteer, and each officer was elected by comrades. This democratic approach was both their strength and their weakness. It fostered unity, but often at the cost of efficiency. Napoleon, with his acute understanding of military strategy and his finger ever on the pulse of his troops' morale, began to reform the army from within. He introduced the notion of the career soldier, professionalizing the army. Soldiers were now promoted and officers appointed based on experience and merit, not just the fervor of their revolutionary spirit. He created formal ranks and structured regiments, ensuring that each unit was a cog in a larger, well-oiled machine. As a result of these changes, the once ragtag bands of the Revolutionary Army morphed into the professional legions of the Napoleonic era. They retained their revolutionary zeal, their core identity, but it was now channeled through the structured veins of a modern military colossus. Napoleon had taken the undisciplined bravery of the revolution and forged it into an instrument of empire, a legion that would march under the tricolor across the continent, imprinting the legacy of the French Revolution with each step. In essence, the transformation of the Revolutionary Army under Napoleon is not just a tale of organizational change. It's a story of how controlled passion can become an even greater force, a lesson as relevant on the battlefields of the past as it is in the endeavors of today. The winds of change that Napoleon ushered in were not confined to the mere appearance of the army or its hierarchical structure. They fundamentally altered the tactics and strategy at the heart of warfare. The introduction of the corps system was a masterstroke that revolutionized military operations on a scale never before seen. Previously, armies marched as one colossal entity, a sea of men moving in unison which, while impressive, was cumbersome and inflexible. The Revolutionary Army, caught in the fervor of its cause, often operated in a similar manner, charging headlong into battle with the belief that their revolutionary spirit could overcome any obstacle. Napoleon, ever the tactician, saw the potential for a new form of warfare. He envisioned an army not as one unwieldy body, but as a collection of limbs, each capable of powerful independent action, but also working in concert towards a common goal. The corps system divided the army into smaller, self-sufficient units. Each corps had its own infantry, cavalry, and artillery, and was capable of marching and fighting independently. This innovation allowed for strategic and tactical flexibility that was hitherto impossible. Napoleon could now feint, maneuver, and outflank his enemies with a grace that belied the size of his forces. He could send one corps on a diversionary attack while another marched to hit the enemy's flank or rear. He could spread his forces to live off the land, reducing the strain on his supply lines, and then rapidly concentrating them for a decisive battle. The strategic depth this provided was immense. Each corps could react to the battlefield's fluid dynamics, shifting and adapting as the situation required without waiting for orders from a distant command. This autonomy was balanced with strict discipline and a clear understanding of the overall strategy, a concept known as mission command in modern military parlance. The tactical evolutions went hand in hand with strategic ones. The use of massed columns allowed for the concentration of force at a critical point, while the divisional squares provided defense against cavalry. Skirmishers, previously an irregular and undervalued force, became the eyes and ears of the army, screening movements and harassing the enemy. Furthermore, the uniforms and regalia of the Napoleonic soldiers served not just as a means of identification, but as a psychological tool. The shako, the tailored coat, the gleaming buttons, and the eagles soaring atop their standards were designed to instill pride in the soldier and fear in the adversary. They became symbols of a new warfare era, where appearance and reality intertwined to create a legend on and off the battlefield. The result of these changes was an army that operated like a complex organism, each part performing its role in harmony with the others, yet capable of independent action when cut off. Napoleon's legions were not just soldiers, they were the bearers of a new doctrine of war, one that blended the art of strategy with the science of tactics, forever changing the face of battle. Campaign after campaign, Napoleon's legions swept across Europe. From the pyramids of Egypt to the snows of Russia, their footsteps echoed the relentless beat of a new era. They were no longer just Frenchmen. They became the embodiment of the Napoleonic war machine, a force that combined the fervor of the revolution with the ruthless efficiency of an empire. In the grand narrative of Napoleon's reign, woven with the threads of military genius and imperial ambition, there lies a darker, more somber strand. The battlefields glorified in paintings and songs were in truth harrowing stretches of earth, where the currency of empire was paid in the blood of soldiers. The brilliance of tactical maneuvers and the grand spectacle of uniformed regiments often obscured the stark reality of war's human toll. The toll was not merely in the number of dead and wounded. It was in the cries that pierced through the cannon's roar, the letters home penned with trembling hands, the young lives cut short, and the potential that would never be fulfilled. Every soldier was a son or daughter, perhaps a sibling, a spouse, or a parent. Each loss sent ripples of grief through families and communities across the continent. Despite the specter of death that loomed over them, Napoleon's soldiers marched on, their resolve hardened not just by duty or discipline, but by a potent blend of ideology and personal allegiance to their emperor. Napoleon was not only their leader, he was the embodiment of their hopes, and the architect of their dreams of glory and advancement. His will seemed to forge an unbreakable bond, a collective determination to prevail no matter the cost. This cost, however, was immense. The campaigns, though marked by stunning victories and territorial expansions, also bore witness to the devastating aftermath of battles such as Borodino, Austerlitz, and Waterloo. The fields were littered with the fallen, and the air was thick with the despair of the dying. The scale of suffering was monumental, a testament to the era's brutal calculus of warfare. Moreover, the soldiers' sacrifices were not confined to the battlefield. The long marches, the harsh winters, the scarcity of food and resources, the diseases that swept through the ranks, all these, too, took their toll on the men who had set out to conquer Europe. Their endurance in the face of such hardships speaks to the human spirit's extraordinary capacity to bear suffering for a cause believed to be greater than oneself. As historians and as witnesses to the past through the lens of history, we are called to remember that behind every tactical triumph, behind every strategic masterstroke, there were men and women who bore the weight of these endeavors. Their sacrifices were the foundation upon which the legend of Napoleon's legions was built. It is in acknowledging these sacrifices that we truly honor their memory, not as faceless pawns on the chessboard of history, but as individuals who played their part in shaping the world we know today. The tale of Napoleon and his Grande Armée is one that resonates through time, a story of transformation from the ashes of revolution to the glory of empire. It's a reminder of the power of human potential, the importance of vision, and the impact of one individual's will to shape the course of history. And as our story concludes, remember that history is not just in the past. It lives, breathes, and continues in every one of us. If you've been captivated by the saga of Napoleon's legions, the revolution, and the empire, then join us in the march through history by subscribing, sharing your thoughts, and engaging with fellow history enthusiasts below. Every like, every share, and every subscription fuels the journey through the annals of time, just as the fervor of revolution fueled Napoleon's legions. Until next time, keep the wheels of time turning.